His star power has brought a ton of publicity BYU's way, but the gravitational pull that AJ Dybantsa holds, it's absolutely undeniable.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. As always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Go to FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, on today's show, we're going to talk about AJ Dybantsa and what he has meant to the BYU basketball program, and even more so in this transfer portal cycle. We'll also talk about a name to monitor in the transfer portal and Dame Sarr by way of some comments from Kristen Peak on the Locked On NBA Big Board show recently. And then we'll finish up today's show with some fun stuff, a question and answer with our Locked On Cougars Insider Group, football, basketball, and a few off-the-cuff questions as well. We'll get into all that ahead on the program. All right, so let's start off today's show. I am astounded more and more the more I learn about connections that AJ Dybantsa has to the guys that are coming to BYU, are rumored to potentially be coming to BYU, and the gravitational pull that he seems to hold in the college basketball universe. Yes, Kevin Young and the success that the BYU basketball program had this past season is an absolute pull for guys to consider playing for the BYU Cougars. Now, all of them will work out. We talked recently about Makai Mason, a guy out of Washington who BYU is chasing. Well, he committed to Wake Forest earlier this week, so he's off the board. But when I look at the connections that AJ Dybantsa holds, it is more and more glaringly obvious to me that he is having a major impact on BYU's ability to attract talent to Provo, Utah to play alongside him, ostensibly for the one season he will don the blue and white for BYU. You look at it, Rob Wright and him played in a summer slam, whatever they called it, a game where they played together back in 2023. We have learned that he has got connections across the college basketball universe. We're talking from the NBA all the way down to the high school ranks, and people are enamored with the thought of being able to play alongside talent like his. He is obviously going to have a ton of attention, and he has drawn a major amount of publicity BYU's way already before he's even enrolled at BYU. Today is April 17th, so we're 12 days away from him at last reporting that he will be enrolling at BYU in 12 days' time, so under 2 weeks. And who knows what is going to happen as they put together this roster around him. But I can assure you, based on everything I'm hearing, reading, observing, he is going to have players at very minimum interested in playing alongside him. We talked yesterday about Darian Williams from Texas Tech, and if you're an everydayer, I talked about the fact that I think he is the key piece that could put BYU over the top, where they could absolutely be a top 5 team entering the next college basketball season and have a chance to make a run at a Final Four and a national title. Well, here's the deal. Guys like him have got to be considering, if I go and play alongside a guy like AJ Dybantsa and all the NBA scouts and the personnel that he will attract to these games, that is going to allow me to shine on a bigger stage and maybe attract some extra interest when it comes to NBA circles. I am absolutely enthralled by what he is able to accomplish simply by being who he is, speaking of Dybantsa. He has shown time and time again to absolutely be all in with BYU. I remember I've heard questions from people, well, you think AJ, he's really that engaged with BYU? All he does is don BYU gear every single day, it seems like, out there. He talks very openly about what he hopes to accomplish at BYU. He told Sports Center Next, which is a high school account of ESPN, that he's very eager to play alongside a guy like Robert Wright III. We're seeing reports out there now that Darian Williams from Alabama, who's a 6'8", 220-pound forward from Georgia, well, He and AJ Dybantsa were teammates once upon a time, and BYU reportedly is in the mix for Darian Reed. You look at Darian's numbers, they're not overly impressive. 14.1 minutes per game in 24 games this past season for the Alabama Crimson Tide, who we all know beat BYU in the NCAA tournament. He shot 45% from the field, 26.3% from three, 57.9% from the free throw line. So there's some numbers that need to improve, but 6 points, 2.8 rebounds. There's not numbers that you write home about, but you're looking at potential with Darian Reed. And going back to my original premise of today's conversation, his connection to AJ Dybantsa is why BYU is able to get in the mix with him, because as a native of Grovetown, Georgia, I would highly doubt that if AJ didn't have what he was doing for BYU and playing for the Cougars, I would imagine that trying to get in the door of talking to a guy like Darian Reed might be really difficult for the BYU basketball program. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think that what AJ Dybantsa, the power he wields, I call it gravitational pull. He is going to have a lot of people at minimum curious about what BYU has and what they might be able to offer to the BYU basketball program. Is it going to work out for everybody? No, because there's simply put, there's not enough seats. There's not enough roster slots. If this House settlement goes through, what once was 17 roster slots will be reduced to 15 roster slots in college basketball. And that's unfortunate because obviously you lose opportunities to add extra bodies to a roster that could be uber talented like BYU projects to have right now. But easily right now, even with some roster slots open for the BYU basketball program, they are right now being projected. I've seen as high as number 5, number 6 in these way too early preseason polls. And that's right where I would chalk BYU up. I think they're a top 10 team. And you add a Darian Reed, who as a freshman, didn't have overly impressive numbers. He's playing on a pretty veteran-laden squad at Alabama. If he comes to BYU, does he emerge as maybe that backup big alongside a guy like Keba Keita? We'll see. Obviously, he'll ultimately have to decide if BYU is where he wants to be. The only reported visit he has set so far is he's headed to NC State early next week to see what the Wolfpack have. But if BYU can get him out here to Provo and he links up with AJ and the rest of the crew, maybe he falls in love with it and says, you know what, BYU is where I want to be. And he could come in and take on a figuratively a more prominent role as a backup big, maybe a stretch 4 in a sense. But I like the fact that there is talent emerging from all angles for BYU to talk to, and seemingly every single one of them has some sort of connection with AJ, and that shows that this is a kid. He's well connected. He's incredibly talented. He's blessed with God-given talent, and that is just undeniable. And what the impact he could have for BYU basketball really could linger beyond his time in Provo, Utah, as finite as it might be, because a guy like Darian Reed, I don't think he would be coming to BYU with the whole thought process, I'm going to play the one season with AJ and then I'm going to hit the portal once again. These guys know that they want to grow up with the program. They want to emerge and really be a star player. I don't think Robert Wright III's got the same thought process. He's coming to BYU, obviously, to play a point guard role alongside an AJ Dybantsa, but he also understands that he's got to look out for himself as well in his professional future. The nice part about what Kevin Young has proven so far is that they have an NBA culture and an NBA-esque model in Provo that can build these guys in to NBA prospects. And that's what's got to excite a guy like Darian Reed if he were to decide that BYU is where he wants to play. In the case of Robert Wright III, he was already appearing to be on a track for that down the line, but how much more development can he show this year as a sophomore for the BYU basketball program? The numbers suggest that he is going to see an uptick on what was already pretty impressive numbers as a freshman. That only means good things for the BYU basketball team. They'll obviously have to have some veteran leadership, but that's why I think guys like Keba Keita, Richie Saunders, Dawson Baker, they offered that, and they can bring that element to this roster. And I think the mixture of the parts here that Kevin Young is putting together right now, it's really enticing, but it all, once again, revolves around the pull that AJ Dybantsa really has, and it's incredible to watch his ability to bring literally people from across the country to good old BYU. And it's kind of crazy to consider what he is doing as an 18-year-old who appears to have a very bright basketball future, but showing that he has got major prowess out there on the recruiting rankings and just the overall recruiting landscape of college basketball. It's a sight to behold, at least from my vantage point, for the BYU basketball program. Now, one name that I don't know if he has a direct connection to AJ Dybantsa, but he has been suggested that BYU is one of the finalists for him and could be extending BYU's reach once again internationally, is the name Dame Sarr. Who is he? What would he offer to the BYU basketball program if he were to pick the Cougars? And why in the heck is BYU in the mix here? We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. And it's right when you need it. Upwork gives you the businesses the flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes the hiring process simple and affordable. The best part is posting a job with our friends at Upwork is free and simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates will be there for you to choose from and get going on whatever project you need to work on. And the best part is you can visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with the right talent and grow your business today. Once again, post that job for free at Upwork.com today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you're having a fantastic Thursday out there in Cougar Nation. All right. Now, I was catching up on some podcasts from earlier in the week, and I missed this one, and it actually was sent to me by a couple of our insider group members, and it comes from the Locked On NBA Big Board. Now, the folks over the Locked On NBA Big Board do an incredible job. Rafael Barlow kind of heading it up as the director of scouting and the main host of the program, but Kristen Peak has been a really good analyst of top-tier talent coming out of Europe, out of the high school ranks, junior college, and the like. She's an incredible NBA draft analyst, and she said earlier this week on Locked On NBA Big Board that the name Dame Sarr is one that BYU fans may want to monitor because she considers the Cougars to be a finalist for this young man out of FC Barcelona over in the Spanish ACB League. Now, last year, BYU pulled Jaeger Demon from Real Madrid. Now, it's not necessarily the same level of rivalry as I understand it with Real Madrid and FC Barcelona in soccer, but there is still a pretty strong rivalry in the basketball ranks between these two clubs. But BYU has shown that they can bring guys from overseas, Jaeger Demon just the most recent example, and they emerge on the other side as really solid NBA draft prospects. Well, the interesting part about this is that Kristen was at the Nike Hoop Summit and watched Dame Sarr play, and she is of the opinion that even though he is currently in the NBA draft pool and is considering leaving his name in the NBA draft, she thinks he would be better served as a 19-year-old to play college basketball first, and that's where Illinois and others come in with BYU as a potential landing spot for him. When I first looked him up, they listed him at 6'5". Then I saw 6'6". The most recent reports suggest that he is 6'8". So he is a swingman. He's a pretty slender build right now. I think they listed him at 180 or 190 pounds. But if you look at his numbers coming out of FC Barcelona, I almost said Real Madrid. I got to get that right. He averaged 5.8 points per game this past year for FC Barcelona. So not absolutely incredible numbers, but the number that I reiterate time and time again, what is BYU looking for? They're looking for guys who can shoot the three. And what did he do this past season? 42.9%, but it's on limited attempts, just 1.8 attempts per game. Now, he's only 19 years old, and FC Barcelona, much like many EuroLeague teams, they depend and rely on their veteran core to play the majority of the minutes. He had a 12.8 minutes per contest in 12 games for Barcelona, so he didn't play a ton, but the talent and the skill set, if you look at his highlight reel, it's undeniable. And this past recent Nike Hoop Summit, he racked up 17 points on 5 of 9 shooting, went 1 of 2 from beyond the three-point arc, and had 4 rebounds in 25 minutes of action. He's originally from Italy, so he played at the 2022 U16 European Championships, U18 European Championships, and also the 2024 U18 Eurobasket. So he's got international experience. He's played for his national team. And as Kristen suggests, that she thinks this would be a good opportunity for him to bypass the NBA draft this year, go and develop the collegiate ranks, and maybe re-enter the draft in a year or two's time. Well, that's where I think BYU's pitch to him is very compelling. They can say, hey, there's this guy named Jaeger Demon you're probably very familiar with. I think they're the same age because you think they're in the same class, albeit at different clubs. And you say, he came here, he emerged as a starter, really had a strong finish to the season, is now probably going to be, at worst, a mid-round, first-round pick. That's the latest intel is kind of that Jaeger is sitting anywhere between 5 and 15 in the first round. But obviously workouts, interviews, and the like will determine where he ultimately goes. But they can pitch a guy like Dame Sarr and say, look at him and look at what we've got building here. You can come in, much like I talked about a little bit earlier on, the poll that AJ Dybantsa will have with NBA personnel coming to look at him will shine an extra limelight on you and give you an opportunity to show yourself capable at a higher level. Now, the other question is Dame Sarr looking to be a starter at the collegiate level wherever he lands? Because Kentucky's in the mix. I said Illinois is in the mix. They all can pitch that, hey, there's opportunities here. But at the same time, how much of a role does he really hope to have? Does he want to emerge as a starting two guard? BYU could, in theory, be that landing spot that could offer him that opportunity. I think that two guard spot for BYU right now, I think is still open. And the reason I say that is because I consider Richie Saunders to be the 3, and I think that AJ Dybantsa will likely play the 4 spot. Now, in this era of college basketball and basketball in general, the 1 through 5 designation, it is more meaningless than it ever has been because we've gotten to an era where positionless basketball exists. And I think the interchangeability of an AJ Dybantsa, Richie Saunders, and in the case of this, of Dame Sarr, I think you interchange one playing the 2 on a certain set and the other one's the interchangeability is what is going to reign supreme here. So I'm really interested to monitor this because I hadn't considered that Dame Sarr was going to be a ready-made prospect for BYU until Kristen said that. And knowing what I know of Kristen, and I've talked to her a fair amount, she is well connected. She talks to a lot of people in these recruiting circles. And if she says the BYU, she used the term finalist for Dame Sarr, means that Kevin Young and company have been doing some work on the back end with his recruiting staff, obviously his brother Justin and his assistant coaches. Their ability to literally look worldwide is in many respects unparalleled. Now, there are other coaches out there in the college basketball ranks who have done a really good job tapping into different markets worldwide. But I think we're seeing the reach that BYU, obviously with its affiliation with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that global reach, in addition to the connections these coaches have on Kevin Young's staff, they are showing that they can go out and find guys wherever they may be. And in this case, file the name Dame Sarr away. Now, it's far from a done deal because, as I mentioned, he is in the NBA draft pool. And as an international prospect, they have, I think, until like, is it late May, maybe early June, before they have to withdraw their names from the NBA draft. They actually have a later deadline, if I recall correctly, than stateside prospects do in terms of removing themselves from the NBA draft cycle. So that could mean this is a protracted recruitment where you're waiting months at this circumstance because you could be waiting until June before he decides where he's going. But the skills seem to indicate that he could be a really, really solid pickup. And if he can shoot the 3, if he can really hit on 42 or 43% of his 3-pointers and maybe in more volume that he'll be afforded playing at BYU, that's what BYU needs. They need shooting from the perimeter. That is one of the key things they still need to add on this roster. I think the other 2 things they need to add, another Mawit Mag or Trey Stewart, who's a defensive stopper. And then, as I mentioned, we needed another big. I'd like to see a true 7-footer. Maybe it doesn't have to be 7 feet, but a big man that is capable of defending the rim. And I think that would be a key part of the calculus for BYU roster-wise. But it's worth filing the name away. Dame Sarr. Get used to that one. A lot of people pronounced it Dame, but doing research on it, apparently it's Dame Sarr. That's what Kristen said. And Kristen knows of what she speaks of. So once again, interesting to hear all these prospects emerging seemingly out of nowhere, but every single one of them holds intrigue, and it shows that Kevin Young and company, they've done an incredible job at doing their homework on every prospect under the sun, it appears, and they have got their ability to literally make that reach go worldwide. All right, we'll finish up today's show with more basketball questions, football questions, and even some off the beaten path questions, personal, that type of stuff from our Locked On Cougars Insider group. I want to get back to doing this weekly, so we'll get to our mailbag segment coming up next. If you roll on right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here. Now, they start formally this weekend. The NBA play-in games are still ongoing, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action, my friends. Right now, if you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love, obviously, how FanDuel makes it simple for you guys to have fun on the app. It's really easy to use. The best part is you can pick your favorite team, get in on player props. Plus, after the game tips off, if you want to do live betting in game, you combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win even bigger payouts. All that is available to you from our friends over at FanDuel. So get in on the action. It doesn't have to be the NBA. It can be college basketball futures, or if you're into football, NFL or college football lines, over under win totals. That's all available to you from our friends over at FanDuel. So do not miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim that $250 in bonus bets today. Once again, that's FanDuel.com to get started with our friends at FanDuel. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, if you would like to ask questions in this segment, the way you do it is to be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. As I say all the time, you get a 14-day free trial, just $5 a month to be a part of the group, and the updates that I'm sending out are coming to you in the form of a text message, and you can fire back with thoughts of your own. We have had a lot of good conversations. I was getting my oil changed yesterday, and I had some time to kill, so I just threw it out and let people kind of pepper me with questions, responded to them. It's a really, really fun way to interact with people, and hope you guys will consider joining the Locked On Cougars Insider Group if you have not done so already. All right, on to the questions here. First question, let's get off the beaten path. Laramie, what should the name be for the Utah hockey team? It should be the Utah Mammoth. That's my thought, and it's where I've been ever since they announced the original contenders for the name. I know the Utah Yeti was one that many favored, and obviously Yeti Coolers kind of kiboshed that deal, but I've been on the Mammoth train forever. Now, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, keep it the Utah Hockey Club and call them the Clubbers or the Clubbies. That's what I would go with moving forward here. Next question from Daniel. It says, I love hearing about everything that's going on with football and basketball. Can you give a general update for some of the other sports going on at BYU? I could do that more. I used to do that a lot more, and obviously I've kind of gotten away from it. The number one thing I'll pass along right now is baseball, kind of in a bit of a lull here. Now, BYU baseball, they have been kind of stuck in this no man's land in many respects for many, many months now. BYU softball, on the other hand, they're kind of treading water, trying to get inside the projected at-large bid line with regards to the NCAA tournament. They've got a key series at Gale Miller Field this weekend for BYU softball against the University of Utah. The rivalry series, the first time they have played as conference rivals since 2011. That's one to keep an eye on. And then obviously track and field. There's so many different events out there, but I just know this about BYU track and field. They're pretty darn good. Men's volleyball, I think, ranked 7th this week. They've been up and down this season. So there you go. Some of the updates that I can think of off the top of my head there for you, Daniel. But I'll do a better job about updating them more as well. Gary Gabriel asking this. What was your take on Drake Toll saying on his podcast that the Lee Kamard hire was a bad move? I guess it's been a week back or so. Now, I did see that Drake said that hiring Lee wasn't going to lead to any amount of what he felt like was going to be like success. He thought they should go outside the program for their new hire. I said it once on the podcast. If you go back, I'll say it again. Lee deserves this shot. Lee has paid his dues. He has worked through 2 different coaches with the women's basketball team. I don't think he ever really anticipated being a women's basketball coach, but he's fallen in love with that sport. He's been on my radio show. I'm actually wearing my KSL Sports Zone hat today if you're watching this on YouTube. And he came on and said that women's basketball is having a moment, and he's really excited to be a part of it. And he's done a really good job about retaining talent in the program. You look at Delaney Gibb. You look at Kaylee Woolston, who removed her name from the transfer portal. The talent he's brought in, Olivia Hamlin, who was a 2-time 4A player of the year here in the state of Utah. He got her to flip from her commitment to Nebraska and pick BYU. He's doing a great job, and I disagree with Drake. I don't think it was a bad hire at all. All right, next questions coming up here. Choose the most intriguing if only or what if scenario. This comes from Josh. This is interesting here. So number one, A, Brandon Davies plays for the 2011 NCAA tournament. B, Taysom Hill is never injured during his college career. C, the fade route at the end of the first half is caught by Taase versus Kansas this past football season. D, Luke Staley never breaks his leg. And then E, the Hail Mary is successful with 1 second left against ASU in 2024. Ooh, all good questions. I will go with this. Obviously, this past season, those two plays, the fade route and that Hail Mary, would have been absolutely incredible and probably would have put BYU on a path maybe to play in the college football playoff. They got very, very close. But I'm going to go with B. I would have liked to have seen what Taysom Hill could have accomplished as a fully healthy player during his time at BYU. He's been fairly remarkably healthy. Obviously, had a knee injury this past year that knocked him out for the New Orleans Saints in the NFL. But if he were fully healthy his entire time at BYU, he could have put up some absolutely incredible numbers. And there were points at which he had BYU rolling and looked like potential Heisman Trophy candidate. That's the what if I will go with there. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. All right, other questions here. Bryce, do you think the House settlement will slow down BYU's chances to attract top talent since NIL won't be as much of a blank check? Now, the House settlement obviously will have a clearinghouse run by Deloitte Consulting that will look at all NIL deals. Do I think that's going to slow down BYU's ability to attract top talent? As long as they win, I don't think so. Now, could the money be curbed a bit? Sure. But here's the deal. Guys want to go play for top tier programs. And if you can get a guy like AJ Dybantsa and he has success at BYU, that success begets success. People will want to say, okay, I want to go play for a winning program. Kevin Young's got a good thing going in Provo. That's where I want to play. Yeah, maybe there'll be some guys who wouldn't be necessarily as enticed by the big money offers the BYU report is able to put out in this pre-House settlement era. But I don't think that it's going to necessarily kill BYU's chances. Bob with a similar question on the lawsuit with roster cuts. I don't fully understand the logic behind them. What is the advantage for the players? In theory, the advantage here, Bob, is that the roster slots can be fully scholarship. So you could have 105 scholarship football players, 15 fully scholarship basketball players. Baseball, for example, they've been operating for years, I think with like 11 and a half scholarships across like 40 roster slots. In theory, you can fully scholarship those 40 roster slots or whatever the number is. You can fully scholarships in it. So that's the quote unquote the supposed advantage for the players. I still think walk-ons are a lifeblood of collegiate sports that are being cut out of this, and it's a really, really bad deal. And I hope that they tweak it a little bit and help those walk-ons at least get grandfathered in, or they kind of smooth the cut downs where you're not having as many guys have to be cut right away. Tyson, great question here. With the recent Robert Wright III transfer to BYU and Baylor officially become rivals. You've been trading dramatic wins for years, even before BYU entered the Big 12. Then you factor in all the names we have in common: Jeff Grimes, the Barrington brothers, Caleb Lohner, Gary Bohannon, and the religion-based origins of both institutions. It feels like it's inevitable. I do consider Baylor to be a rival for BYU in the Big 12. Obviously, their premier rival, the arch rival, is the University of Utah. But Baylor, I think it's a fantastic secondary rival to have in this league. And yes, the connections, the games they've played, this Robert Wright saga, yeah, it lends itself to a nice rivalry feel to it. And I'm all for it. I love rivalries in college sports. Ezra, one potential breakout player on each side of the ball for BYU football next season. All right. Good question. Defensively, I'm going to say breakout star. This is a little of a cop-out. Keanu Tanavasa. I'm expecting him to be absolutely special for this BYU defensive line. So I guess that's a cop-out answer there, but he can be really, really good. Also monitor the name Ace Kafusi. Now, that last name's familiar because the Kafusi clan has been very good to BYU football. The linebacking core is absolutely locked and loaded, but Ace had a really, really good spring. So keep an eye on him. Offensively, I'm going to say JoJo Phillips. I think that he is ready to emerge maybe into that role that was vacated by Darius Lassiter and really emerge as that option B to the A option of Chase Roberts. I think JoJo's got all the skill. He's all 6'5". He can run. He can catch, obviously. I think he has got a star potential written all over him, but Keelan Marion is not going to yield an inch either there. So keep an eye on that. All right. Other questions here. Oh, some interesting ones. Oliver, do Do you come from an LDS background or did you discover the church for yourself? And then Travis also asked, I would like to know if you remember the Church of Jesus Christ when you were born as I was. So there you go. I was born in the covenant, as we like to say in the LDS faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've got connections all over in the LDS church. I got a grandfather who's got pioneer roots. I've got a grandmother who is an immigrant from Germany, who her father joined in Germany, was a pretty legendary missionary in the early days of the church over there. But yeah, I'm born and raised member of the LDS faith. I served a mission. I'm married in the temple, the whole thing, if you want the whole background there. And I still espouse to be a pretty faithful member, go to church and do all the things. And my kids obviously are a big part of it as well. They seem to be a big influence on me continuing to do what I do, but I do really enjoy the church. I know it's maybe not, I don't want to get all preachy on this, but yes, I'm a very active member of the LDS faith. Let's just get that out of the way. All right. Other questions here real quick. I think we're this is a good one. Isaac, I know you have a busy life with a family and obviously the 2 jobs you do in radio and this podcast, but do you have other hobbies outside of sports? I do. I love golf. I am a big time golfer. I play at least once a week. I play in a men's league. It's my excuse to be able to at least get out once a week. I aspire to play golf literally every day at some point in my life. Now, that may never happen, but that's kind of my life goal. I'm a huge sports fan at heart. That's why I do what I do in the sports sphere, working in media. It's a labor of love in many respects for me. I do enjoy reading. I don't read as much as I used to, but I do. I'm a bit of a bookworm. I was that growing up, but golf, you guys don't know this. I'm a big football fan. And quite frankly, I love hanging out with my kids. I'll be honest, when the whole thought process of having kids came about when my wife and I got married, I don't want to say I wasn't sure about it, but I was uneasy with the whole thing. But I can say now my daughter is almost 9. I've got a 6-year-old boy, and my other boy is a year and a half. They are absolutely awesome, and I love being a dad. That's the other thing about this. All right, so there you go. I think I got all of them out of here. If I did not, I will make sure to hit them up tomorrow. I'll have to review and make sure I got through the list. I kind of had them piled up back to back to back there. But as always, thank you for the questions. Really fun questions and kind of enlightening on my background. So hopefully that shares a little bit more about who I am if you're a newer listener and or viewer of the podcast, a consumer as it were. But as always, I appreciate all the support, regardless of if you're in the insider group or not. Thank you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing this with your family and friends. I say this all the time, but once again, for the gazillionth time, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you once again for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.